Perfect. Yep. Oh, so the recording in progress. Okay, there we go. So bonjour and me magaduk Nigaan webidam digitacos namago shindo damni min windam omayayin. Bonjour Michel Masak to Komasak, Mijan Gijik, Nimiji Nibakwe, Day. It's nice to be here to share with you the language of Treaty 1 and Anishinaabe, where I come from, Bungi, Peguis, and Donchi, Anishinaabe, and Dow. I come from Peguis First Nation, and as I shared the last time I was speaking with people at the North York Community House, I was actually physically able to come for the first session, which was really nice, and hanging out with everybody over there. I got an orange shirt at the end, and so that was very, very nice. I got to hang out with Joan, because Joan and I never met before that day physically. We talked a lot on phone and engage each other by sort of setting up these sessions. But a big thanks to Joan for organizing this and for continuing to commit to a journey and inviting me and offering me a sema to come on this journey with you. And so I'm very pleased and honored that you're able to be here for today. I'm going to talk today. Now that I'm reflecting back a little bit, I perhaps should have thought a little bit deeper about it, but I think it's impossible to do it any other way. And so we probably should have talked about treaties today, but we're going to talk about treaties in the next session. So we'll talk about the treaties on December 14th. And but we have to talk about the land today before you talk about treaties. You can't really go the other way around. You can't go, oh, treaties, and then we'll talk about the land. Because what we're ultimately talking about is the continuation of what I talked about when I was with you guys last time, which was around what is Anishinaabe, or what we're doing here, and what is it that we're doing when we talk about Indigenous peoples. And then the argument that I made back in a month ago when I was there, physically there, which was that every single person, in order to just be generally competent in the country, just to be a person who can function in a workplace, a person who can walk the streets of Canada, a person who can turn on the TV and understand what you see, you have to be competent on relationships with Indigenous peoples. You have to be competent just to drive streets and go, oh, I understand what that street sign says because it's in Cree, or it's in Haudenosaunee, or it's in Anishinaabe. And so just to be a competent Canadian, you have to be able to live in relationship with Indigenous peoples. And we're not talking about some kind of ornamental relationship to go, oh, it's fine if we pull out Indigenous peoples every 4 years at the Olympics or something like that. It's about living every day in relationships with Indigenous peoples, understanding that your workplace, the place you shop, the place you live, these are all places that have been fundamentally built for you. People have been removed for you. Spaces have been created for you that have impacted your relationship with Indigenous peoples. Every single Canadian has that responsibility. And it's sometimes formally through treaty, but sometimes it's just through the basic premise of being here. Like, for example, every immigrant, by coming here for the first time, whether it be you're here for 10 minutes or 10 years, you gain a relationship through treaty by just stepping off a plane, by just even thinking or booking your ticket. You then involve yourself in a treaty with Indigenous peoples. And necessarily, treaty is about land and space. It's also about time, but we'll talk a little bit about that in about a month from now. And so what I want to talk today about is about our relationship through the land. And what does it mean when we say that we share territory with? What is an Indigenous perspective of the land? And then what does it mean for us to have a living relationship with the land? What have we inherited as people who are living in a space together as Canadians, as Indigenous peoples? And as a Canadian person who has been here for multiple generations, or you're brand new, meaning you've been here for just a little while, you share in all of the things that have come before you. And so in order to sort of begin this conversation, though, I just want to recognize the tobacco that was offered to me by Joan at the very start of this journey. Tobacco, as I spoke about a month ago, but I'll revisit that teaching for a moment, is around when you offer tobacco to someone, you are offering a sema, and a sema for Anishinaabe means law. Law comes from the notion of us committing to a journey together. I'm wondering if I should pin myself. Should I pin myself here, Joan? Is that useful? Is it useful if I do that? Is that better? Or should I just leave it as a big, oh, spotlighted. Somebody spotlighted me. Okay, there you go. I feel weird because now there's a big thing in front of me. So I'm just looking at myself. I'm going to try not to look at myself. In fact, I'm going to probably just escape out of that and just sort of go like that because now I feel better. Now it's just a little me on the screen. I'm not going to. So asema. When asema is offered, it represents time, because when tobacco is grown, people commit to a journey with tobacco. You don't just grow tobacco, you earn it. And that means that when tobacco grows to a plant that's about yay high, about, just below my shoulder, and if you're lucky enough to be able to foster and grow tobacco, you learn that tobacco takes time, energy, commitment, and it's something that's not easily done. You must commit to that journey, offer your words, your songs, all the time that you'd be normally driving your kid to hockey practice or band practice, or driving your kid around to, you don't watch Netflix. You're committing to tobacco. You're making sure there's enough moisture, enough heat, making sure there's enough time and exposure that the tobacco has had on the earth. And as our ancestors learned this by fostering a relationship with tobacco, it became something very precious, this tiny little pinch in your hand. And that when you offered that to another person, what you were saying was, for the immense respect or the immense gift that I am asking you to give to me, I am offering my immense respect to you through the gift of this tobacco. It's like painting this beautiful picture and then just giving it away. Hundreds of hours that it takes to grow that, to foster, to make all the lines necessary to take the vision of your mind and put it into a beautiful painting. And then you just give it away. Just give it away to anybody. And that's the kind of focus that's necessary to think about tobacco. Now, tobacco, upon being offered to someone else, then you have a responsibility as an Indigenous person to return that gift, to offer the same kind of gift to someone. So that's why we say miigwech. And miigwech is the return of that gift to another person. Miigwech means I give. It doesn't mean thank you. And so when I say miigwech, what I said is I'm committing to offering back the gift that has been offered to me. And so that's a little bit of Anishinaabe Law 101, but it does all the principles that are necessary for you to understand for today. So I've been offered tobacco, I've accepted tobacco, I've offered to you the time that you are offering to me today to give back to you so that we can build a relationship. But that is precisely the kind of land-based learning or an Anishinaabe understanding of the land that is necessary to move forward. That has been practiced for millennia by Anishinaabe people. Oh, just excuse me for a second here. I just want to make sure that I encapsulate something here. So, okay. Oh, here we go. I just had a little bit of a moment over here. There we go. So I want to talk a little bit about the land for today. So the land in Anishinaabe means aki. Aki. The word means aki. And the word aki, you will see, exists in several different forms throughout our language. So aki is meant to be an animate being. And for our purposes, you can think of the Anishinaabe language as divided up into two different ways. Most of our words are verb-based. So even when they are nouns, they are still they are still verbs. So think of it this way, that Anishinaabe is a people, but it's also a people who do stuff. It's a people who, like you don't just are Anishinaabe, but you do Anishinaabe. So that's the same thing with Aki. So when you're talking about the earth, it's not just saying the earth is, but you're saying what the earth is doing. And that's the way that we understand our relationship with the earth. So going back to our creation story as Anishinaabe, there is, I won't be able to give the big creation story here, but what I would say is that for the Anishinaabe, life begins when two things intersect, motion and action. So that, well, it's really motion and breath, but breath is action, so it's the same thing. But motion and breath. And when those two things meet, when Gege-Menido realizes the connection between those things, she realizes responsibility, which is that when you envision something, you have a duty and an obligation to create it. So that's the first lesson of the earth, the first lesson of Aki, which is that the earth was thought about before it was created. And that means there's a plan in the earth. There's an intention within the earth itself. So for Anishinaabe, when we look to the tree, for example, like I'm looking at a beautiful tree from the office that I'm sitting in. By the way, I'm in the University of North Carolina right now, sort of famous one at Chapel Hill. I'm giving a lecture this afternoon, and that's where I am. So I'm in North Carolina, and I don't want to mention to you, but it's very beautiful here. It's plus 26. So it's very sad. I know. I'm sorry. In Winnipeg, it is horrible weather right now and very sad. But anyways, so within the earth itself, there is an intention, there is a plan. So that means everything has a purpose, or what elders will often say, which is that there's a meaning for everything. So it's our job as Anishinaabe to figure out what that is, to look at the world and go, okay, well, how does this work? And part of that is understanding the plan of Gege-Menido, the great mystery. We don't have a God. There is no such thing as a God. There is just mystery. Like we don't have an answer of who created creation. It's certainly not some guy with a big white beard sitting in the clouds. It is a part of a plan for everything. Mm-hmm. And the answer of that plan is actually ourselves, that we are a tiny piece of the design of Gege-Menido. So each one of us has a part of the secret of the mystery. And the only thing that I know about the mystery is that I'll never know it all. So, but my job is to try to find out as much of the mystery as I can. So that's why I spend time visiting with people, and I spend time with the eagles, and I spend time swimming in the water, because my job is to go out and not sit in my basement by myself in a corner, but to go out into creation and be Anishinaabe, feast and spend time and share food, share everything necessary with people, with non-humans particularly. We should actually spend more time with non-humans than with humans. We do anyways. And that's where we get this notion of sharing gifts throughout creation. So there's a grand plan with everything. And it's my job as an Anishinaabe to try to figure out what that is. And so that's why I feast, for example. That's why I offer tobacco. Tobacco comes from that teaching around Anishinaabe not knowing where to go, or how to exist in creation, how to interact with things. And so that's where tobacco comes in that story. Anyways, so that's a very quick version of an understanding of where land comes from. So when Gege-Menido created land, land was one part of creation, and created in several different parts: directions, wind, stars, not in that order, but then plants, and then plants, and then trees, and then beings, and insects, and animals, and birds, and fish, and as we go along. But earth is one part of that creation. But when creation was forged, it had no movement. And that's when Gege-Menido realized that motion was a part of the original plan, the original vision. That when she first imagined the world, she saw it as moving, as something that is that has life. And so here's the first lesson of the earth for Anishinaabe. The first lesson is that not only is there a plan, but the earth was put into motion by Gege-Menido through breath, that everything had an announced purpose. And so in the creation story, it says that Gege-Menido picked up each element of creation and blew into it. But another way to think about that is that Gije announced through breath to creation the intention of all things, or what the meaning of all things were. And that means that the earth has a stated intention. And we have to, as Anishinaabe, try to figure out what that is. What is the intention of the earth that we look out and we see? That tree right there, why does it grow in that particular way? And our job is to listen to creation, envision, watch, witness, to taste, to smell, to touch. All the gifts that we have been given will give us a tiny bit of the secret of the experience of the earth. So what does that mean? I was at a gathering the other day where a wonderful elder who spoke just after me in a circle that we were doing in Thunder Bay. And he said that every time I go to a new territory, I pick up a little bit of the earth, a little bit of the dirt, and I just taste it, and I bring it into my body. And what he said is in this really beautiful teaching, he said that it's not just my job to experience a territory to say, oh, I'm on this territory, but my job is to take a little bit of that territory into me so that when I go home, that I don't forget where I came from and that I experience that and I take it with me. And then I return a little bit of tobacco when I do that so that I make it a reciprocal gift. Now, that's a really profound teaching about the notion and the power of the earth, which is that we don't just do that through taste and through smell and through touch. We also do that through our eyes and through listening. And as Anishinaabe, your job is to listen to the earth, probably first and foremost. My uncle says there's a reason you're given 2 ears. And it's because your job is to listen to creation the most. And when we put young people on the earth, or any people of any age onto the earth, and we ask them to fast, what we're really telling them is to listen. We're telling them to listen to creation, experience creation, see, smell, taste, but particularly listen. Creation is speaking to you about the mystery that it offers. And therefore, by learning that, you then have a responsibility to return the gift, to return that gift. So what does that look like? Well, it most oftentimes returning a gift, just like that tobacco offering I said at the beginning. Your job is to then offer something back to the earth. That might be a little bit of tobacco, or it might be a little bit of food if you are partaking in food. But it's probably stating your name, whispering back to creation, introducing yourself, telling creation who you are and what you're here to do. And probably it also means acting respectfully, acting kindly on the earth. Don't pollute it. Don't throw your garbage away on it. Make sure that you put everything in its place, that you treat everything with respect and dignity, because the earth is speaking to you as a relative. And as I mentioned before, Anishinaabe has animate words and inanimate words, but both of them are verbs. So both of them are doing something. And so particularly animate words. And so as the earth is enacting itself to you, the earth is speaking to you, you have an obligation to return something. It's like a potluck. So we know that as our creation story goes, and this is where treaty is going to come in, that the best relationships are through gift-giving relationships. That when beings offer gifts to one another, then they embody responsibility. And that creation then moves in a uniform way, in the best way possible. It moves in a way that makes sense. It's when we reverse or we reject the gifts that are being offered in creation that we have a bit of a harder time, that we go upstream instead of downstream. And so when we work with creation and we see the gifts that are being presented, we don't turn those away. Like if you see an eagle that flies across from your eyes and makes a call, there's something there that creation is telling you. There's something there that the universe is presenting to you. And it is just for you. It's meant for you. It's meant for you to have heard that. Others could have heard it too, because it's also meant for them. But you particularly were meant to see and to witness and to taste and to see and experience that part of creation telling you something. It would be like visiting a relative when you're sitting on the earth. because when that relative is intending for you to hear something or making that cup of tea for you, they're not making it for someone 10 blocks away. They're doing it specifically for you right now, right here. And so this is a really important and sacred teaching around the earth, because it is that you have an obligation to spend time with your mother. And that's why the earth is called your mother. And we know that our mother is our most important being. Fathers are good, grandparents are good, children are good, but all of us come from a mother or a parent in some way. And when we come from a parent, that being, that motherly being knows, cares for us, also scolds us when we need to be scolded, also tells us that we are beautiful when we're feeling down, also encourages us to go in this direction versus this direction. And we can listen to our mother, or we can deny our mother. We can say, we're not going to listen to you. But oftentimes when we deny our mother, the person who thinks about us the most, we may be operating upstream versus downstream. And we may find creation very difficult to deal with. We may find creation punishes us or gives us a very harsh lesson. Sometimes it's the lesson we should have gotten in the first place. And sometimes we need that lesson. Sometimes we also need that lesson too. So when we witness the earth and we create a relationship with the earth, then other teachings come out of the earth. The mystery is further unveiled to us, which will make us curious and learn more about the earth and so on. But what I want to do right now is I want to give you a tangible example of what I mean by all the things I'm talking about. So it's fine and good to talk about the earth, and it's fine and good to say, okay, this is what the earth represents for Anishinaabe and so on. But I want to give you a tangible example. I want to give you an example that you could think about and understand as a way in which we as Anishinaabe practically, my little advice to you in this is that, if you ever spend time with Indigenous communities and particularly elders, you'll realize a really basic fact, which is that we are intellectual people, we are philosophical people, we are creative people, but we're also extremely practical people. Everything we do is extremely practical. In fact, if you start with practicality, it will always take you to the philosophical, the intellectual, the creative. It doesn't work the other way around. Like, for instance, if you say, oh, all Indigenous peoples like circles, then it's just going to take you to a bunch of stereotypes. You don't really know what that means. It just, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you'd be like, you're starting with the philosophy, but then if you don't see it in action, like, why do we sit in a circle? What do circles teach us? Why is it that the circle represents the science and physics of the world? If you sit in a circle, then you go, oh, okay, I understand the tangible functionality of a circle, and that will lead you to what Indigenous peoples, why circles mean so much. Why do circles embody intellectual knowledge, and why are they about nationhood and sovereignty? But it doesn't work the other way around. If you say, okay, I'm going to start with circles, and then you look to Indigenous peoples, what you're probably bringing to Indigenous peoples is a lot of stereotypes, a lot of a bunch of nonsense that says, oh, well, circles are about, I don't know, like to buy the world a Coke, or remember that ad? That's old school right there. Or that circles might take you to a place in which you might not always articulate in the clearest way. You might be trying to take one teaching versus and put it on another teaching. Start with the local, start with the functional. And so I'll do that for you here, and I'll give you an example. So everyone wants to talk about land-based learning, right? So what is land-based learning? Well, it's time on the land. Now, there's a famous saying that I often hear, and I particularly hear it amongst elders, which is that I can tell you about the earth. I can explain to you what we do on the earth. I can tell you about knowledge, but it's not till you experience it yourself. It's not until you see, witness, taste, hear the universe that you can truly understand what our relationship with the universe is all about. So I want to just take you a little bit through an experience of what we do with young people, with young men in particular, but we also do this with young women too, or two-spirit people. But it is about what we call the Oshki Ishkade ceremony, or the fire ceremony for a young person. Now, you'll notice something very sacred in that word Ishkade or Ikade, depending on where you stand in Anishinaabe territory. Akade. But you hear the word? Aki. Aki. So that word is specifically about earth. But Oshki, which is also another way that we'd say new, which is, by the way, the same word for Aki. So Oshki Ishkode, or Ashki or Aki Akade. It's another way you pronounce it in different Anishinaabe communities. It means new fire. But earth is a part of that word. So really what I'm going to talk about today is about fire, but I'm really talking about one of the central core teachings about the earth. And what do we know about the earth? Well, go back to your grade 5 science class. What do we know that's in the center of the earth? The very center. It's fire. Fire is at the center core of the earth. We call that molten lava or magma or the core of the earth. The one thing that we know about the earth is that at the center of it is fire. And so this is really important, this is really important stuff, because when we teach people about fire, you are teaching inherently about the center teaching of the earth, what is at the very center. So what do I mean by that? So we take our young people, right? And this is particularly useful for the ways in which we teach young people about that are in jails. One of the things I often say to young people who are in jails that I work with is would you have kids? And most of them will put up their hands and say, oh yeah, I have kids. And I'll say, well, who's taking care of your kids when you're in jail? And they'll say, oh, it's my grandmother, or it's my partner, or my kids might be in the child welfare system, might be a different family, and so on. And I say, well, like, what are the kids missing not spending time with you? And my hope, of course, through motivating people, and you always want to be careful in the way in which you talk to people who are experiencing a trauma like that of not being around their children, is to hopefully inspire people to, upon leaving jail, find a reason to live, a reason to stay out, a reason to build your life in a different direction. And so that's the motivating factor of what I'm trying to do there. But I'm really talking about fire. Because what we do then is we take young people, these same young men, the ones I work with in jail, and we take them on the earth. And we sit them in a circle and we say, okay, guys, what we're going to do now, and this is when I work with really wonderful elders like Jason Parento, who works in my territory, and et cetera, really wonderful people who do this work with young men. And we say, okay, guys, your job now for today is to build a fire, because we're going to need a fire to cook with. We're going to need a fire to sit around and visit with. And, we're all going to be here for a couple of days. So we're going to need some water. So we need to boil our water. We need to make sure that, we're warm at nighttime, so we're not cold and so on. So our job is to build a fire. And that's functional, right? It's functional. Remember, start with functional. And so we need a fire. So how are we going to build a fire? Well, we don't have matches, because having a match defeats the whole purpose in the first place. Or what I like to call is matches are privilege. Only the privileged have matches. And privilege can only take you so far. You need to understand what Anishinaabe did for generations. And we might learn a little bit about our relationship with the earth. So our job is to do all the things necessary to build a fire. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to collect some flint. We got to go find some flint. So there's flint in the rock mound over there. And then our job is to collect a striker. And so I'll carry those strikers, which are usually like metal with a kind of coarse edge to it. I'll hand those out amongst the young men. I'll say, okay, but you need to light something. So we need some dry grass, and then we need kindling. And then we also need someone to set the earth and to clear out the space. And we also need someone to be able to lay tobacco, to make sure that we are going to welcome the fire, because the fire is going to be a relative. The fire will be a grandparent who has been existing much longer than we have. And so the fire is going to give us this wonderful gift to be able to live in this place just like our grandparents have given this gift. So what we do is we collect all those things. So it's now like noon, right? We get there at 9, it's like noon now. And what I say to the young men, or what we say to the young men then is our job is to try to get this dry grass to catch. So we're going to take that flint and that striker. We're going to hold the dry grass at the end of our hand, and we're going to try our best to try to get that flint to light. And we quickly realize that that makes our knuckles very bloody. It's very painful. And you're going to fail 99 out of 100 times. 999 out of 1,000 times you're going to fail, because it's going to be very difficult to get that dry grass to catch. In fact, you're going to knock a piece of flint and you'll finish it, go get another piece, and then you're just trying. It's now like 2, 3, 4 p.m. And finally, one of the young men in the circle will have the dry grass at the end of their hand, and they will be able to catch that spark, which will jump from the flint onto the dry grass, and then a tiny thing of smoke will start to form in the dry grass. You have about half a second at that point to drop your flint, to grab that eagle fan and try to get that dry grass to catch. And then you're going to fail another 99 times, another 999 times. And it's going to be frustrating. It's going to be angering. So you're going to get lonely, and you're going to get angry and sad, because you're going to fail a lot. But what's going to happen is every time you drop that flint and that eagle fan's picked up, your brothers, your cousins, your uncles, your aunties, your sisters in that circle will start a song. And that song will be a grandparent song that can only be sung when the fire begins to make its way to where we are sitting. And they will sing that for you until either A, you get the fire started, or B, the fire goes out. Because sometimes people start journeys and stop them. Sometimes the earth isn't ready. Sometimes we're not ready. Sometimes we've just got to, prepare ourselves a little bit nicer. So get ourselves nice and clean and organized, and then we try again. And like I said, we're going to fail another 999 times until finally someone catches the dry grass. We start the song, the eagle fan is going, and you see the dry grass catch. And then you drop that dry grass into the kindling. And the kindling then hopefully catches from the fire on the dry grass. You may fail more. If you're able to do that and you're able to start a fire, how excited do you think are all of these young nephews and nieces when we at 6 o'clock now, trying a fire for over 9 hours, how excited are people? How excited are the young men and the uncles, the aunties, that the fire has now arrived? Well, like thrilled would be an understatement. It's a lot of high fives. It's sometimes some tears. But that's not, the work is not done. In fact, if anything, what we say is the work is now started, because we now need someone to not just make a fire, but they've got to protect the fire. They've got to feed the fire. They've got to nurture the fire. And feeding and nurturing are two different things. Feeding is like putting logs on, but nurturing is like making sure that the fire doesn't go out, or the fire is built in a particular way where air and breath and the right food can reach the fire. And through that entire relationship, what these young men have realized is that I'm not talking about fire anymore, am I? I'm talking about being a dad. I'm talking about being a partner. I'm talking about being a cousin or a nephew. I'm talking about being a sister or an auntie. Like, fire is not about just a place of warmth, a place we can make food, a place people can sit around. A fire is the center. It is the center of creation. It's literally the center of the earth, the center of our lives. And that when we learn how to build that fire and invite that fire into our lives, earn that fire, you're not only spending time with the earth, but the earth is profoundly teaching you how to live as a human. Particularly, all the social, political, economical, spiritual roles that you will carry as an Anishinaabe person or as a human person. So as a young man or as a young woman, you will learn everything you need to know about being a parent from making that fire. And of course, that fire will teach you about how to create warmth, a place of community, a place where we can cook, and most of all, a place that involves responsibility, that you don't give up on that. So that's what being a parent is all about. Any of you that are parents know that being a parent is about inherently about responsibility, and fire is the teacher of that. It also teaches how to be a good partner. If you're going to have a partner with someone and you're going to go in a relationship with another person, it's about commitment, it's about loyalty, it's about respect, and probably the most of all, it's about carefulness, it's about mindfulness, it's about, you know, not being too aggressive, not being too soft, being someone who works with something more than perhaps works against it. Because it's all fine and good to throw a bunch of logs on the fire, but if there's no wind, if there's no air, then the fire/relationship will go out. If you starve a relationship by giving it no food, by no attention, then that fire will also go out. So we've learned that to be a good partner, a fire ceremony is necessary. In fact, for Anishinaabe, within our wedding ceremonies or our commitments, we don't have weddings. Me. Water somewhere? That doesn't, let's use this. Within our commitment ceremonies, fire making is an essential part. In fact, a future spouse or partner, we don't have spouses and marriages, but a future partner has to be able to make a fire in front of their future partner's family, or that family can choose and encourage that person to not be with that individual, because fire is the essential key. Remember, practicality, functionality, but it leads you to intellectualism, creativity, the way that we live. That is the functional part of Anishinaabe, as Anishinaabe partnerships. And we don't have marriage, we don't have monogamy, we don't have homosexuality, we don't have heterosexuality. Like, we have multiple roles in society that aren't fixed, that aren't designed specifically for, this is what a marriage is. It's a nuclear family property sharing arrangement. We don't have any of those things. We have that you have a commitment ceremony, you commit to a person for a while. Sometimes that person is with similar body parts to you. Sometimes they are of other body parts to you. Sometimes they might be the same or different. Doesn't matter. You know, the only thing that I really know about Anishinaabe commitment ceremonies is it's about love. It's not ultimately about your body parts. It's about your love. Do you love that other person? And that if you can demonstrate that, the best way you can demonstrate it is through fire, through making a place where people can love each other, care for one another. And that's why when I say we don't have homosexuality, heterosexuality, monogamy, polyamory, whatever others, let's get out of sexuality for a second. We don't have fixed identities that's based on genetics and biology. It's influential. It's a part, you know, like it's a part of your lives, but it's not the only part. It's also about how do you love one another? How do you interact with the universe? What's necessary in the time and the place? Okay, that was a bit of a segue there, but here's another thing that you learn about is how to be a good grandson or a granddaughter or a grand person to your elders. Thing about a fire is a place of safety and protection. You'll know this because if you are out in the world, the universe, and a fire is created, often predators will not come by. Beings who want to harm will not come by. Fires are about protective spaces. They're about loyalty. They're about inviting people to even a nation. You know, a nation is built around a fire. And so it's crucial to understand that to build a relationship with your ancestors, you must know how to make a fire. or your future ancestors, or even your present ancestors, you need to know what a fire teaching involves. In the same way that a fire is also a place to be a parent. It's a place to create warmth for future generations, sustainable generations, for you to teach them how to make their own fires and how their fire will be different to your fire, different materials, different time, different space. But all of that is through a relationship between Anishinaabe and fires. And it is amazing, on just a side note there, of how much this changes the lives of the young men in prisons that I work with. This one teaching alone is one of several that are given by people who work with these young men. But that fire teaching is one of the most critical elements to keeping people in a good place to become all the things that they already are, but to become more full as a father, as an uncle, as a partner, as a brother, as a nephew, as a grandson. All of those things come out through that teaching around the relationship between ourselves as Anishinaabe and the fire. Now, what I've just said to you is a unique relationship, a functional relationship, but also a highly intellectual, spiritual, economical, all of those things with the earth itself. And as I talked to you at the very start here, when we interact with the universe as Anishinaabe, we learn about the secrets of creation. When we hear a little bit more of our what is it that we're doing here? What is it that we're living here? What is it, the secrets of creation that we get to be a part of? And then we carry that and we offer that to others, which is what I've done today. So our job as Anishinaabe is to fulfill the original vision of motion and breath, that when we were gifted individual pieces of creation by Gije Manitoba, that the only thing that I know is that everybody in creation's job is to learn about me, and my job is to learn about everyone. That's what everybody's job is to do. The earth or the sun, sorry, by peeking its over the horizon and watching us all day is demonstrating that teaching. The stars that come out at night and visit us is giving us that teaching, both offering us gifts, and we are learning. We are then returning that gift to the stars, to the sun, to the moon, to the directions, to the earth, to the water, to the plants, to the animals, to the fish, to the birds. And so this is what Anishinaabe, or what we would refer to as Ngonigan, right? Natural law, or the law of creation. This is the central core of what Anishinaabe understand creation to mean, which is that it's a place of gift giving. It's a place of interaction. And most importantly, it's a place of learning. It's a place of Minoba Madzawin, the good life is created when everybody shares their life with each other. That's where peace comes from, right? That's where that's where treaty comes from, which is a really good segue to December 14th and the next session, which will be a month from now. Today is November 9th. So a month and a couple days from now, we will talk about treaty. We'll also then talk about a few other topics along the journey that will relate with today's teaching. So for example, one of the teachings that I'm going to give in a couple weeks is around education. So like, what is education for Indigenous peoples? How do we see it? What's formal? What's informal? Well, most of that education takes place on the earth because it's about functionality. Like, how do you live? How do you hunt? How do you fish? How do you collect medicines? How do you sit on the earth and learn and listen? And almost all of that has to do with the earth, because we learn far more from non-humans than we do with humans. But then in February, you're going to notice that I take a lot of time, and I often go right up to the very point in which we finish. And a lot of this is because I have kind of an agenda that I think through for every session that I do. And then I have sometimes a couple minutes for questions or comments, but generally I don't have a lot of time. So you're going to find yourself going, okay, well, I want to ask this, or I'm curious about this, or I want to know more about this. Your opportunity is going to come on February 8th. On February 8th, what I'm going to ask you to do is to keep these questions from the sessions that I've been leading, whether it was last month's session live, where I talked about, like, why are we here? Why is it important to learn about Indigenous teachings? And then today's session, which is around the land or the earth. you may have a question out of this. Maybe you don't feel comfortable asking it on this platform, but your time to ask that question is on February 8th. So February 8th, we will do a session together, and then we're going to do another 5 sessions after that. We're going to talk about governance, we're going to talk about health, justice, talk a little bit about the future. That'll be a fun one at the end, because I'm going to talk to you a little bit. I'm going to make an argument at the very end, my last session, of why comedians might save the world, right? Or why comedy is a big part of Anishinaabe, or humor, and that humor might be the method that we would use to solve many of the problems across the world. It's very hard to see that, especially when we consider situations like the Middle East, or even situations like the current electoral state in the country that I'm sitting in right now, the United States. It's hard to laugh at these things, and it's certainly hard to find humor in them. But it might just be humor that we need to find to give us the method to understand things. And so we're going to do that over March, April, May, and then finally in June, we'll do a final session, which will be a kind of final visit on June 9th to finish our sessions together. So that was a kind of a recap of what you'll see over the next few weeks. But at the same time, it was also a kind of a wrapping up of this section on the land. And my hope is that I've enlightened you, that I've given you some gifts today. Just like that tobacco, that I've returned back a little bit of the tobacco that you have offered to me to ask me to do these sessions, that I've given you an hour of time for you to reflect and to think. And most importantly, don't ever just do things or think things or believe things because Nigaan says so. Go out and do your own research. Go out and spend time with elders and Anishinaabe people, or other people from other tribal communities, other Indigenous areas and pedagogies. Spend time with other peoples, because that's your job. Your job is to go out and learn from everyone else, to be a critical thinker, learn from yourself. What do you feel? What is in your heart that you know to be true? And then when you collect more information, you can begin to assemble a story for yourself. And then your job is to go and tell a story, to hold sessions like this, but maybe not formally on a Zoom meeting. It might be with your kids, it might be with your friends at a coffee shop. It might be sharing your knowledge with others in a book or a poem or a short story or whatever it might be. Okay. So we have about 3 minutes left, and I'm going to hand this back to Joan here. But my hope is that you learned a little bit about Aki today, the earth or land, and that you understood a little bit about the ways Anishinaabe learn about the land and interact with the land. And then I gave you a very practical way, the Oshki Ishkade ceremony, that first teaching about the center fire of creation, that magma, that center, and how it is that by interacting with that, by remaking that, we create worlds that can then manifest themselves in our life purpose. To be a partner, to be a brother, to be an uncle, to be a parent, to be a grandparent, to be a grandchild. All of those things are fulfilled in the learning and the engagement with fire. I could have talked about water. I could have talked about looking at the stars. I could have talked about skinning an animal or harvesting a hide, because all of those teachings are crucial too. And they also talk about the earth. But I wanted to give you one really practical takeaway for today. Okay, so Joan, I'm going to hand it back to you. I'm now at, I think, about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes left. So.
Well, we won't tease people by saying we will entertain questions. Thank you so much. I love Thursdays. Every second Thursday, my favorite time. So thank you. Looking forward to the next one, December 14th. I cannot even believe we're talking about December already. We will see everybody then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.